Picture the scenario for a second. You've always had a very specific, maybe slightly draining dynamic with someone. But then something just clicks for you. A switch flips. You stop reacting to their criticism. You stop over-explaining every single one of your decisions to that one highly critical friend or relative. You just start living your life entirely without needing their validation. Now, logically, you might think that becoming a calmer, much more self-assured person would make your relationships so much easier, right? Well, actually, with a very specific type of personality, the exact opposite happens. Strangely enough, instead of respecting your newfound confidence, they just get irritated. Out of nowhere, they might start picking completely unnecessary arguments, throwing out these subtle little insults, or even accusing you of changing for the worse. And this brings us right to our central mystery. Why on earth would someone become so upset simply because you became more independent and at peace? I mean, on the surface, it seems completely irrational. But if we look closer, psychology tells us there is a very specific, hidden reason driving this whole reaction.
So let's explore Section 1, the hidden mechanic and the unseen strings of manipulation.
To really solve this paradox, we have to completely redefine what control actually looks like in our everyday relationships. When we hear the word control, we usually picture someone barking orders or making these really obvious, aggressive demands. But psychological control, it's incredibly quiet. It hides behind guilt tripping, a heavy sigh from across the living room, a vague, passive-aggressive text message, and this constant, exhausting demand for your attention. You see, a toxic person doesn't always want to control what you physically do. They want to control how you feel. Because if they can make you doubt yourself or keep you constantly seeking their approval, they get to remain right at the absolute center of your emotional world. In psychology, this exact dynamic is often described as a need for emotional dominance. Toxic people rely incredibly heavily on this concept. This means their own sense of security doesn't come from a place of healthy trust or mutual respect at all. Nope. It comes from knowing for a fact that they can pull your emotional strings. Think about it. Every single time you argue back just to prove you're right, or you apologize for things that literally weren't your fault, you are giving them confirmation that they still have influence over you. You're showing them they still know exactly which buttons to press.
Which leads us to Section 2, the catalyst of change, cutting the strings. Let's see what happens when that dynamic shifts. Imagine you're facing criticism. You generally have two choices here. The first is the defensive reaction. You argue back, you explain every tiny detail. You spend literal hours trying to prove your innocence. To the toxic person watching this unfold, this is a massive victory. Your emotional reaction is proof to them that they can still shape the conversation. But now, look at the second approach, the calm boundary. You just listen quietly, maybe smile politely, say, "I understand that's how you see it," and you just move on. Boom, the conversation ends. By doing that, you've completely shut down their emotional reward. Now, to most of us, setting that calm boundary looks like really admirable confidence. But to someone who completely depends on emotional control, it is deeply, deeply unsettling. The very moment you no longer need their approval and you just refuse to be controlled by guilt, manipulating you becomes incredibly difficult for them because you've just removed the emotional reactions they rely on the most. It's kind of like they are trying to steer a boat that has already left the shore. No matter how aggressively they yank at that steering wheel, they absolutely cannot change your direction. And this takes us straight into Section 3, the panic escalation. This is what happens when their emotional system totally breaks. The crucial takeaway here is that their sudden anger isn't necessarily because they dislike you. It's because the emotional system they've depended on to control you has completely broken down. And when they realize they are losing that grip, they often escalate their tactics in some pretty desperate ways. They might ramp up their criticism to try and crack your armor. They might use heavy guilt tripping to make you second-guess your new boundaries, or randomly bring up a mistake you made like 5 years ago. Sometimes they'll even flip the script entirely and suddenly act like the victim of your new attitude. Or they pull out the classic silent treatment, just hoping you'll get anxious enough to come chasing after them. But it is so vital to understand this. These behaviors are absolutely not signs of strength. They are just repeated, desperate attempts to regain the emotional influence they used to have over you. Finally, let's wrap things up with Section 4, Shield of Emotional Independence, protecting your inner peace. Let's look at how understanding this entire psychological dynamic actually empowers you to protect your peace, and you don't even need to change your core personality to do it. You see, emotionally independent people don't become impossible to hurt because they're suddenly cold or emotionless, not at all. They become difficult to manipulate because they truly internalize one incredibly powerful philosophy.
Not every accusation deserves a defense, not every opinion deserves an explanation, and not every conflict deserves your energy. They realize that they always have a choice, so they actively choose their own peace over the exhausting need to prove a point to someone who has already chosen not to understand them anyway.
So the biggest lesson here, it isn't just about trying to avoid difficult people for the rest of your life. It's about building up your own emotional independence. Because the exact moment your self-worth no longer depends on someone else's validation, you instantly take away the control they thought they had over you. Now, obviously, this doesn't mean you just shut everyone out. Healthy relationships thrive on mutual respect and honesty. But when someone repeatedly tries to control your emotions, establishing this quiet confidence is actually an act of profound self-respect. It truly becomes your strongest emotional shield against manipulation. So the next time someone becomes visibly uncomfortable simply because you've become more confident and emotionally independent, please don't view it as a sign that you're doing something wrong. View it as undeniable proof that you've finally stopped giving away your peace. As we wrap up this explainer on the hidden psychology of toxic behavior, I want you to ask yourself one final thing. Have you ever noticed someone's behavior totally change after you stopped seeking their approval? Take a moment today to reflect on your own experiences with the independence paradox.